If you're looking for a little bit more power out of your big boost or big cam full bolt-on NA Coyote, then you should definitely check out the Ford Performance 90mm throttle body. This throttle body will work on the stock manifold in addition to the Boss 302 and also the Holley Sniper manifold as well, but will require an adapter for the OE Ford manifold and the Boss 302 manifold, which ultimately will add to the final cost. You're going to be looking at about $500 for the throttle body by itself without the spacer, while the install will be very straightforward. So let's call it 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, with a little bit more detail to come later in the video. First things first, if you have a stock or very lightly modified GT, this is probably not going to be the best throttle body for you, as you really won't be moving enough air to see any real benefits. Instead, I would probably recommend sticking with the stock throttle body or even stepping up to an 85mm option if you really wanted to upgrade. But on the other hand, if you're working with a turbo or centrifugal blower, or you're running a nasty all-motor setup, then hang out with me for a little bit and let's talk a little bit more about this Ford Performance throttle body. Now, the 90mm throttle body will increase your overall throttle body size 10mm compared to the stocker that we have right here, which will ultimately allow for more airflow into your modified Coyote. Ford Performance claims the 90mm that we have here will flow 1132 CFM when compared to the 913 CFM of the stock throttle body, which is 80mm by the way. Now, the 90mm diameter is currently the largest offered when shopping for a round throttle body option. Of course, you could always step up into an oval throttle body, but those are really only going to apply to the Cobra Jet intake manifolds or something like that. And this does seem like a great time to again mention the fact that you can utilize this throttle body on your factory Coyote intake manifold, in addition to the Boss 302 and even that newer Holley Sniper intake manifold. Now, the Sniper, it already features a port-matched 90mm opening on the intake side, and honestly, that's what you're looking for, because the factory intake manifolds, including that Boss option, feature an opening of just over 82mm in diameter. So to get the most of adding this 90mm throttle body, port matching would be highly recommended. Another thing to keep in mind is that using this 90mm throttle body on your stock Coyote or Boss manifold will require the use of the additional spacer that you can grab from the drop-down menu on the product page, but keep in mind it will tack on roughly $50 onto the purchase price of the throttle body by itself. But enough about all of that. Let's talk a little bit more about the construction. And the Ford Performance throttle body is certainly built extremely well, as you might imagine. You're going to be looking at a brightly polished billet aluminum construction, along with all of your electronics already installed and ready to rock. Now, this does include brand new throttle position sensor, in addition to your actuator motor, again, already installed, essentially turnkey. Now, this throttle body does include a separate jumper harness, as you can see right here, and this will need to be utilized and will require you to repin the factory throttle body harness on your GT or Boss. Now, as someone who absolutely hates wiring, I can tell you it's not as bad as you might think it is, and I was actually able to knock this one out pretty easily using the included instructions. All right, a couple of things to consider here, and yes, I know it might seem pretty obvious to some of you guys watching, but it is worth talking about. First and foremost, depending on your current intake or charge pipe situation, you will more than likely need to grab a new 4-inch silicone coupler or reducer to link up the larger Ford Performance throttle body to your current intake or charge piping. For the record, most aftermarket intakes, including the factory inlet tube, will be roughly 3.5 inches in diameter. And if you are planning on using this with the stock airbox and elbow, you will need to grab that reducer, but also trim about 1.5 inches from the factory tube due to the larger design of the throttle body. Secondly, and this one shouldn't come as any surprise, but you'll also need to factor in the new larger throttle body to your tune, as it is required from the guys over at Ford Performance. But something tells me if you're bolting this thing up to your heavily modified or boosted Coyote, then you probably already have that one covered. However, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't include all the fine details. Well, let's switch gears and move into the installation, and honestly, despite the small amount of repainting needed, this one will still be a rather simple day in the garage for most owners out there. So let's call it a strong 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and maybe an hour or 2 from start to finish before you have everything in place. As far as your tools, well, a basic socket set is really all you're looking at here, in addition to a repinning tool. Now, if you don't have access to one of those, a really small flathead screwdriver might do the trick, or, I know this is gonna sound crazy, grab a paper clip and a hammer, straighten out the paper clip a little bit, smack one end really good with the hammer on the concrete, bringing it to a point, and that will work as well. Yes, I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it has worked for me in the past in a pinch. Getting started, disconnect the intake at the throttle body and remove the 4 bolts securing your factory throttle body to the intake manifold and set it aside. At this point, install the new spacer if required, followed by the new Ford Performance throttle body. At this time, repin the factory throttle body connector, making sure to follow the Ford Performance instructions very carefully, ensuring all of the colors on the jumper harness match the colors on the throttle body harness. With that wrapped up, reinstall the intake, upload your new tune, and you are all set. Wrapping this one up, if you're looking to squeeze every last bit of power out of your boosted or heavily modified setup, the 90mm throttle body from Ford Performance would be an awesome choice, and you can grab one for your ride right here at AmericanMuscle.com.